people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fucking fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Okay, we'll start with this. What was the Howling versus Dudek fight on the most valuable prospects show on DAZN? What was Howling's debut on MVP and her debut on DAZN? And man alive, did she look the part. This fighter was ridiculously good, and it always blows me away, which is why I always say it, that Howling doesn't have any amateur experience, though you'd never know it to look at her in action, because she has the look of a more seasoned, more experienced fighter than she actually is. So in the fight, what we saw was mostly one-way traffic. Howling cutting off the ring and closing the distance, getting in on Dudek, who was just backpedaling and circling away, not wanting to engage.
She knew not to.
Howling coming out of her corner so hard and fast every single round, throwing more at Beata than Beata could handle in a single sitting. Punches upstairs, punches downstairs, and not just the punches, but the way she threw them.
With variety.
She showed a lot while being the aggressor, while being the fighter that's coming forward, a lot of responsibility while closing the distance, keeping her head off the line.
Off center.
So when you're the fighter that's marching forward, when you're the fighter that's closing the distance, you're more likely to get hit. You're more likely to walk into a shot because the other fighter's hanging back trying to counter you, where Bree showed exceptional head movement, upper body movement, slipping punches, rolling punches, bobbing and weaving under punches, all while coming forward and all while setting up her offense.
Still using her jab
to set up the backhand and what other punches followed. Fluidly, punches upstairs and downstairs.
She wasn't headhunting.
Seen a lot of fighters that are more experienced than Bree make that mistake. Just go for the head and abandon the body, not Howling.
Felt like she hit Beata Dudek with every punch you can hit a fighter with, though because Beata spent the entirety of the fight on her bike, that's the only reason she heard the final bell, because she knew not to engage.
Bree's a strong puncher. Even if she didn't get the knockout in this fight, you know she's a strong puncher because of how much time Beata spent on her bike, moving around. She saw enough and felt enough that she knew not to engage. Don't sit in one spot, because if you do, you're gonna be in trouble. You cannot contend with this girl mid-range to inside. So even though Bree didn't get the knockout,
this was still a good testament to her power, because she has power.
If she didn't, Beata wouldn't have spent all that time running. If she didn't, she would have took more chances. She knew not to. So this is the first time, the very first time in Howling's career that she's fought more than once in a single calendar year, because from the moment that she debuted as a professional, she had been boxing once a year for about 4 or 5 years. This is the first calendar year where Howling has fought more than once. This weekend's fight was her third fight of this year, and there's still time. There's still time to get her another one.
I think they should. It's very easy to look at Howling's performances and come to the conclusion that she's ready already to fight for a title.
But you know that I wouldn't recommend that? I wouldn't do that if I had it my way. If I have it my way, you get her another fight like the Dudek fight, maybe somebody who's a little better or a little different, so that Bree can continue to garner experience, because she's got a lot of lost time that she needs to make up for.
She needs to get used to time under the hot lights, time in the ring, but she also needs to get used to a regular schedule of activity, because for the first time in her career, that's what she's got.
As talented as Howling is, this is a very, very deep division. You have to understand that. And she's not the only bright young star that's there. So there's a lot to prepare for. Not just the champions, not just the titleists, but the other prospects too. So I would advise that Bree ease herself.
You know, gun to my head, if it were Howling versus Miyo Yoshida, for Mio's IBF title, I would go with Brie to win that fight.
Win it right now. I think she's ready for Mio, but she is not yet ready for Shernika Johnson. She's not yet ready for Dina Thorsland. She's not ready for fights with those fighters.
Those eggs need more bacon.
And there are so many good fighters coming through, like Rihanna Rios.
It's another unbeaten up-and-comer you want to watch out for.
The way I see it, they need to build her up just a little more. Maybe you get her a fight with a former champion, like, I don't know, former EBU champion Mary Romero of Spain. And she can be a handful. That's a good acid test for a fighter like Brie. You build her up. You get her a former EBU champion, then maybe a former world champion. These are the acid tests that she needs to have, so that by the time she's fighting for a world title, she's not just ready to win it, she's ready to defend it.
Canada's got talent.
Brie Howling is one of several talented Canadian fighters that I've been talking about here on the channel. Another is Alexis Kubitsky at the lower weights.
Talked about her in my previous video. She's got a fight coming up.
So far, so good for Brie Howling. That was an excellent showing. The only thing she didn't do was knock out Beata Dudek, but maybe that's because Beata spent the whole fight running.
Brie has that effect on people.
Congratulations to her. And junior middleweight news, boxing insider Rick Glaser chimed in on the failed negotiations for an Ennis versus Conwell fight that really never got off the ground. Rick said, let's get something straight. Promoter Eddie Hearn made an offer to Charles Conwell's team to fight Boots Ennis that's so low it's laughable. It really means that Hearn expects and wants Conwell to turn the fight down, so they can use Conwell's quality name as a turn down to pump up Boots like he's King Kong. And Eddie will make it sound like Conwell is scared. Believe this, Charles Conwell's afraid of no one ever.
Spare me.
Did I hear that right? Did he say Charles Conwell's his quality name? What quality name? Nobody knows the man. He has no signature fights. He's just another unbeaten fighter like a lot of unbeaten fighters.
There's nothing special about him, and if there is, he hasn't proven that yet. So when he gets an opportunity to fight a more familiar face, a more familiar name, with a lot more traction in his career than Charles has had, you should jump at an opportunity like that. And don't tell me it's a low ball offer.
I am so sick of hearing these American prima donnas talk about low ball this and low ball that. Listen, sweetheart, you don't make no money.
You're pretending that you do, so you have an excuse to turn the fight down. It was Alicia Baumgartner that had a sobering take.
She said, as a fighter, there comes a time when you have to take a chance on yourself. I was offered $25,000 to fight Terry in her hometown, and I didn't complain about the money. I bet on myself to win and paved the way for the rest of my career. I believe in knowing your worth, but sometimes you're just wasting time staying inactive because you think you deserve millions. Prove yourself. Be the underdog. Overcome the odds. I did it twice.
So I remember some years ago hearing about Heather Hardy turning down $25,000 to fight a matchroom fighter. I forget which one.
I think that a lot of times, especially in the American boxing scene, fighters don't like to acknowledge the reality of their situation. That you already don't make a lot, and you're not en route to making more.
Charles Conwell is a fighter who literally sat out all of last year. He didn't fight anybody. He didn't make anything.
So Golden Boy Promotions picked up this fighter. Recently, they picked up this fighter, and they got him 2 fights. They got him 2 stay busy fights this year. So if you've stayed busy and you're active and you're about as sharp as you can be, you should want to go into a big fight with a big name, a name bigger than yours at least.
The problem with all these unbeaten fighters is that they think they're God's gift already before they've actually earned anything or done anything.
And some fighters that aren't unbeaten, they still have that same entitlement, that same attitude, and it doesn't get them anywhere.
Most of the time I see it, it doesn't work.
Because the old saying goes, scared money don't make money.
Bitch.
Where would Bam Rodriguez be if he didn't take that opportunity to jump up 2 divisions and take on Carlos Cuadras for the vacant WBC title? Where would he be now if he didn't take that opportunity, if he didn't make that big boy decision?
He took a risk, and it paid off. The same applies to Alicia Baumgartner.
But there are some other fighters that don't acknowledge the reality of their circumstances, and they are literally waiting for someone to just come along and roll out the red carpet for them. That's not going to happen. Not until you do something.
You looking for your fairy boxing godmother?
Glenda, the good bitch with the chest? Is that what you're waiting for? That's not gonna happen, my friend. And as far as Rick Glaser taking yet another opportunity to levy criticism towards Eddie Hearn,
Why don't you give it a rest?
there's not a lot of transparency in the sport of boxing, but I would wager that whatever Eddie Hearn offered Charles Conwell, it's more than Charles made in his last 2 fights. If you've got it in your head that Golden Boy Promotions is paying through the nose,
They're not.
you think Golden Boy Promotions is paying Charles anything near $1 million or $500,000? They're not. Trying to make a fight with these people is tantamount to allowing yourself to be extorted. It's extortion, the way they hold every fight to ransom.
It's a hostage situation with these people.
And I'm all out of patience. The reality of your average American boxer is they don't want to fight anybody with a pulse.
They want to make a safe 6-figure payday on the low end of 6 figures, just playing it safe, just coasting. They don't want to risk anything. And the problem is you don't make it in this business without risking anything, because the audience, that's what they pay to see.
Do you think the audience is stupid and they can't tell when you're avoiding risky fights? They can.
That's why they don't pay attention to you. Why should they?
If you don't want to risk anything, then you are in the wrong business, because that's what people really pay to see. The risky fights and the risk takers.
You think you deserve more money, but deserve more money for what? Who are you?
What have you done to deserve more?
Rick is only co-signing all of these duckers because he's got an axe to grind with Eddie Hearn.
The American boxing scene is dwindling and the market is shrinking because of just these business practices. It's on your watch.
You're the boxing guy, aren't you?
This didn't happen on its own. The prima donnas and those who enabled them.
It's okay, Charles. Don't fight him.
Just keep fighting guys like Nathaniel Gallimore. Maybe you'll make $1 million that way. And finally, the Dmitry Bivol versus Artur Beterbiev fight is almost upon us on October 12th, and it will be broadcast as a one-fight, non-pay-per-view event on ESPN Plus in America. The rest of the card, topped by Shakur Stevenson versus Joe Cordina, will be a separate pay-per-view, which His Excellency Turki El Sheikh previously said would be priced at $15 US.
I think Turkey and his team were able to read the room, read the reactions from people.
They had to have realized billing the undercard as a pay-per-view at a price point of $60 to $80, that's just not a good idea. Not for an American audience, maybe a British one.
But not here.
As the card, the undercard I should say, is primarily an international card with international fighters. There's not enough meat on that bone for an American audience. What's on the undercard is a couple of Brits, 2 Aussies,
1 American.
Lowering the price point down to $15 makes it that much more affordable to some people, and that might leave them feeling so inclined to buy it since it doesn't cost very much. You say that they can't hope to make that much money from a $15 price point, but something is better than nothing.
Not that I think Turkey's looking to make money from this anyway.
I've said it many times that Turkey and the Saudis are not in boxing for the gains, the fiscal gains. It's more about a long-term vision to make Saudi the entertainment hub, the entertainment capital, by staging some of the biggest sporting events in sports, including the light heavyweight title fight, the undisputed title fight between the 2 remaining champions at that weight. It's part of a bigger picture. In any event,
Something is better than nothing.
you're likelier to get an American boxing fan to give you 15 of their dollars instead of 60 or 70 or 80 for what is the undercard. Not even the main event. The main event, they're getting that at no additional charge.
Making the pay-per-view more affordable makes it more likely that one or some individuals will buy it.
As opposed to the nothing they would spend on it if it were more expensive. The focus is to make the show more affordable and thereby more accessible to that many more people. This helps that effort along, though even with this, there are still going to be people that choose to pirate the pay-per-view. There are still going to be those people that watch it via an illegal stream.
They never had any intention of buying the pay-per-view, and they still don't, so long as they have that alternative, not paying anything at all.
Those people, public persona, podcaster, and boxing aficionado, Demetria Obalor said Beterbiev beats Bivol by way of knockout or technical knockout. That's who she's going with. That's who a lot of people seem to be going with, though not all.
It's split down the middle.
I don't know how the odds makers have it, the bookies. I would imagine that they have this fight at close to even money, that as destructive and dominant as Artur Beterbiev has been, he is getting up there in age.
There's that to consider.
Though at the same time, Dmitry Bivol is nowhere near the puncher that Artur Beterbiev is. Dmitry Bivol just don't crack as hard as this guy, so you have to wonder if he really can shake and bake him for 36 minutes.
Demetria doesn't think he can. Demetria said, I feel like everyone saying Bivol is gonna win has never seen Beterbiev fight. LOL.
There's no wrong answer right now. You can't blame the people picking Artur to win, can you? But you really can't fault the Dmitry Bivol fans either.
The ones picking him.
I myself am going with Dmitry Bivol to win a points decision for the aforementioned factors I've mentioned several times throughout the years, that by the time these guys do fight, when they do get in the ring, Artur's gonna be older.
Same thing here. Very good. So after surgery was 6 days ago, how's the pain?
I have pain here, like
Very good.
not much.
You don't have pain in this area here, which is where we did most of the work. Can you bend your knee? Show me how much you can bend your knee.
Like this.
Wow, very good. Very good.
While I don't blame anybody for going with Artur Beterbiev to knock out Dmitry, for me myself, going with Artur to win that fight would require me to ignore too much that I've been aware of for a long time. That Artur is already several years older than Dmitry Bivol, and he's pushing 40 now. The injuries that he's sustained over the years, he's an injury-prone fighter. He's coming off a meniscus injury right now.
Appears to be his left leg on his left side.
Artur's an orthodox fighter. He leads with his left. The torn meniscus is on his left leg.
Oh.
Can't ignore that. For a very long time, I told you here on this channel that I felt this was a fight that was going to take a very long time to make because Artur's with Top Rank and Dmitry's with Matchroom. In the past, Bob didn't want to make it.
He was very vocal about that he felt that Dmitry Bivol was boring, that the fight had no pizzazz.
I said it then. For Artur, time was a luxury he didn't have because he's the noticeably older fighter of the two, injury prone, and the sooner he has it, the better his chances. But a lot of time was lost on the politics of boxing, so I figured by the time these two guys do fight, Artur's gonna be older.
Old enough that his age becomes a factor. That if the fight would have happened a few years ago, maybe Artur steamrolls this guy like he steamrolls everybody else.
A few years ago, he might have done to Dmitry what he did to Alexander Vajdik a few years ago, but a few years later, that's more camps, more wear and tear, more injuries, the gradual decay of time.
It catches up.
I'm not writing off Artur's chances completely, but that tips the scales for me. That Dmitry is the younger, fresher fighter with the fresher set of reflexes.
Speed.
I still look at it as a 50-50 fight where maybe Artur can win, maybe he can. But what tips the scales...
Youth. Freshness.
Guy's already hard to catch, he's hard to hit. Even harder when you're on shaky knees.
That does it for me.